All right, so let's go ahead. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, which is perfectly fine. Kris, are you ready?
Good morning. I'm Kris Carambelas. I'm the archaeologist with Public Lands Policy Coordinating Office, oftentimes referred to as PLCO. Appreciate you giving me a few minutes to have a presentation, and I appreciate Matt's presentation because it provides a good introduction to the pitch that I'm going to make, which is support the Stop Act. One of PLPCO's primary objectives as an agency, believe it or not, is to promote the responsible use and preservation of archaeological resources, trying to expand that to cultural resources. And we do that in a number of ways by supporting UPAN, and we do the permitting here. But there was a bill that was brought to my attention thanks to Dr. Michael Searcy at BYU. Oh, it was last October or November, the Safeguard Tribal Objects of Patrimony Act, and it was proceeding through the Senate under unanimous consent. It was held up for very, very good reasons, eventually went through the Senate and was received by the House, but nothing was done to it. And then the 116th Congress ended, and we started with the 117th. So the Stop Act was reintroduced. It's been introduced in both the House and Senate. It's making a little bit more progress in the Senate. But what it really aims to do, it has 8 purposes, and 3 of which I find very compelling. The first one that the Stop Act does is it aims to stop the export and facilitate the international repatriation of cultural items prohibited from being trafficked under NAGPRA and ARPA. We have a lot of archaeological sacred items that are showing up at foreign auction houses, and the U.S. right now, with the ways our laws are written, our requests to have those returned really don't have much footing. So the Stop Act would help the U.S. with being able to go to places in the Middle East or Western Europe and say, you can't auction these items off, and in fact, we need to have them back. The second thing it does, which I think is compelling, is it establishes a federal framework to support a voluntary return by individuals and organizations of items of tangible cultural heritage, including the items covered by NAGPRA and ARPA, without fear of penalty or prosecution. We all know that there are some really bad actors out there who loot these items for profit, but we also know that there are folks who are either naive or ignorant about the laws and have collected things that they really shouldn't have collected, or maybe they've inherited these objects when a family member died and they just don't know how to get these things turned back in. They don't know how to do the right thing. That's one of the other things that this will do, is establish that framework. And then the third thing, I think, to deter mostly the bad actors, is it increases the maximum penalties under NAGPRA for first and second time offenses. So again, we're enhancing NAGPRA, we're enhancing ARPA on this and the penalties, and the point being, hey, let's give folks a way to get these things returned back, but let's also have something in place to maybe deter people with with fines and penalties on that. We had a chance to, our office, PLPCO, had a chance to present this to congressional staffers about 6 weeks ago. I believe that was well received. The Utah Professional Archaeological Council is currently working on an open letter to our congressional delegation. And I've taken that letter and modified it a little bit and put it in the chat that you can download. If you feel so inclined, and I would encourage you to do that, send a letter to our 2 senators and also to your congressional district representative. on that as well. I think this is not only good for Utah archaeology and cultural resources, but it's good for the nation as well. It'll help protect items that are sacred and meaningful to our Native American populations here. It will keep things in place, like Matt was talking about, for not just our generation, but our future generations to enjoy seeing them in its original context. And it'll also, give us the archaeological community, the scientific community, stuff that we can further study. So anyway, I encourage you to reach out to your representative and also the senators to encourage them to support this. Any questions?
Thank you, Kris. Any other additional questions for Kris?
Yeah, if you can just post that information so we can send those letters, that'd be great in the chat or something.
Steve, I thought I had it posted here.
Yeah,
it's a little bit at 934. There's a Word document there. And down at the bottom of that, I've got all of the addresses for the senators and representatives.
Okay, thank you.
And if you don't get it, shoot me an email or I'll send one to you.
All right.
Any other questions for Kris or comments? Okay. Our 10 o'clock presenter is not here, so I'm going to make a similar small plug and then maybe let everybody have a 5-minute health and human safety break, go to the bathroom. But I do want to highlight something that has, bubbled up in the last few years, and sadly archaeologists sometimes need to get hit upside the head, is back in 1990, we passed NAGPRA, which was the Native American Graves Repatriation Protection Act, or Protection and Repatriation Act. But it was just saying, hey, why are we keeping these Native American skeletons and burial materials in museums for all perpetuity? That's a very colonialist way of interacting with the dead. But with sort of the last 2 years of social movement, we realized that as archaeologists and as museums, we've been colonialist to other people than just Native Americans. And there's a growing push for a similar legislation to apply a NAGPRA to also African and African American remains that are being held in museums and scientific research labs. I would also like to see this expanded to all people of color who we've traditionally put into museums as objects of study in a way that is not the same as those that are white. For instance, I worked very closely with the Chinese community. It took almost 25 years to get 13 graves that were dug out of a guy's garden in Winnemucca, Nevada, or Parla, Nevada, back. And it only took the local community agitating to get those remains back, because they would have probably stayed in a museum for all eternity. And so this is just one more reaction that as a discipline, archaeology, we need to move past our colonialist roots and start looking at the people we study as actually people, not as objects of fascination and keeping in boxes for all eternity. So throw a link in the chat to the story about the African and African American discussion of doing a NAGPRA for that as well. So let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break.